It's actually 40 years, and I've been touring around in Africa for that time. I started in Zimbabwe, and then it turned into Zambia, then it turned into Uganda, and then it spread. And every time, I normally try to get here once a year, and every time I came, I was visiting one country and then the neighboring country. So nowadays, I have been almost around the whole of Africa. But now I've settled here. After 40 years, I've settled in Tanzania, and I'm living in Dar es Salaam. And now, since I've retired from what I did earlier, I am taking part in the small touring company. The touring company is called Usambara Expedition. Usambara is mountains at the border between Kenya and Tanzania, and the founder of the company is coming from there, so that's the reason for the name. But the company is actually doing all kinds of things. What I did in my life span in Africa was that I was coming to Africa almost every year, and since I'm a scholar in theatre and I am a director, I was taking part in educating different small theatre groups in different parts of Africa, and have assisted in directing plays, and they have been taking place almost all over Africa. That is not what I'm doing now, because I'm not taking out the bread of people who could do the same thing in, for instance, Tanzania. So I'm doing something else. I'm using my expertise, I'm using my knowledge, my experience of Africa in order to invite more people, maybe from the rest of the world, to see what Africa can offer. Because this idea of going to Africa could be a very narrow idea. I think that most people would like to go to Africa because of the Indian Ocean or the ocean, so that you can swim, snorkel, dive. That is one option. There's also the mountains. You could climb Kilimanjaro if you want to climb it. This boy is coming from that region. It's a smaller mountain just next to Kilimanjaro called Mount Meru. That's where he's coming from. That you could also do that, or you could go to the national parks where you can see all kinds of animals. There's so many animals around, and that is a traditional reason for coming to Africa. But there could be other things. There could be cultural events which you can actually visit. As a matter of fact, if you come to Africa, this boy has some parents, and these parents will invite you to his own village, so you can stay there for 1 day, 2 days, and take part in normal village life, whatever. I mean, you could go to a tea plantation, you could see how tea, coffee is harvested, you could see sugar canes, you could see sugar cane harvesting, maize, whatever. You could take part in the daily life of people who are living in a village. Go together with the women who are preparing food, and you can take part in preparing food, and you can also have traditional, very traditional African food and try to eat that. And you can also learn from nutrition through that, see what people in tradition have eaten, and maybe get ideas of having a new diet for yourself. Since we are now in Europe turning away from eating eating a lot of meat, then you can see how vegetables are used in this part of the world, for instance. And then there will also be an opportunity to see other cultural events. One thing which is famous and which is also known about in Europe, Western world, is that there is dancing, there's drumming, there's music, and that you can find performed in many ways. And in traditional rural life, it would be obvious that if people are visiting a village, then the villagers would make a dance at night time. So also that you can follow if you go to the villages or look at the cultural life. And then you never mention the cities of Africa. Nobody wants to go to the cities. They are big, there's a lot of noise. But also these places can be worth visiting. For instance, I make nowadays a city walk in Dar es Salaam, and during a couple of hours, 3 or 4 hours, then you'll get the impression of the whole colonial era from the slave trade and up to now. You can just walk around in Dar. You can see the Arab locations, and you can see where the Germans took over from the Arabs, and when the Germans lost the war in 18, then the British took over, and they inherited the Arab tradition, the German tradition. And then there's also another influx in, at least in East Africa, but many places in Africa, of Indians. Indians are traditional element in African culture. So in Dar you can see the whole Indian society. There's one street with only temples, and you can see the old schools, the old factories from the Indian times. And then of course also the Africans will be there. And there's an African lifestyle which you can follow. Also in Dar there's an African life, and especially in Jamhuri Street, which evolves during nighttime to be a street full of kitchens. It's one big restaurant, so you can go from one kitchen to another kitchen. You can have your chicken somewhere, and then you can have your dessert another place. But it's actually street kitchen, which you know from big cities in Europe and in the Western world, in the US. But not many people are talking about what's going on in cities in Africa.
So, Mr. Sven, after elaborating what you said, I would just need to ask you about, you talked about something about your work earlier before working in Africa. So can you tell us a little bit about the connection between what you did before in Europe and how does it connect on what you're doing now in Africa? Because as on your story you said that in every year you used to come in Africa and visit the neighboring country on where you're visiting.
Well, throughout the years I was teaching at university and high school in Denmark. I also brought students to this part of the world. So that made me able to get these people into Africa and to give them opportunities to make their own experiences here. So I guess that is a connection between what I did before and what I'm doing now.
Sounds so nice. So can you tell us a little bit about challenges and significance you found in Africa? So why are you in Africa now?
Yeah, I'm in Africa because there are challenges. So of course that is important that you meet these challenges, but that is also areas where you can get more experience and maybe learn something about other people and maybe yourself. Challenges are important to take up. It's important to give yourself the opportunity to get into a new environment and then see what's happening here. I guess that challenges here in this part of the world is most of all the lack of infrastructure, because it takes a very long time to go from one place to another place, so that is the biggest challenge. It's not that it's dangerous to be in Africa, but it is that you really have to have patience. When you come to Africa and you're used to European food, then there will be challenges there. But you have to get used to having food in other ways, in other levels, standards. And in Africa, the staple food is ugali, satsa, whatever it's called, a lot of different names. It's what is normally translated to English is stiff porridge, and it's maize, which you boil with water, and then you eat it. And it's normally not a dish that Europeans would appreciate. So it could be a challenge to, for instance, matoka, which is boiled bananas, and then you can also get boiled cassava. Africans tend to like these things boiled, but maybe you can find ways where you can get it in other ways, so that maybe you can find them fried also, and that will be more tasty, because then we are approaching the chips we know from the European world. You can also get potato chips. I'm now having a life where I'm living in the city center of Dar es Salaam, and my daily life is the daily life of a retired person. I am biking around, I am walking around, I'm visiting the small markets, I'm visiting the shops where I know where I can get what I can get where. And I go to my butcher, I go to the big fish market, which is also worth visiting when you get to Dar. And then there are these very big markets where you have all kinds of vegetables. And if you need to use things which is not a stable diet of the Africans in Dar, there's also an upper class area, the peninsula, where you can buy in international supermarkets what you might need or think you need. So one of the professional groups you can also find in Africa, then you have to go to Kisumu and you will find African Cultural Troupe, which is performing at different occasions and in different venues, especially in the hotels. And you could look for them whenever you think of going to East Africa.